Welcome into the I-80 Boys podcast. I am your co-host, Chris Vaca, as usual. And this window licker next to me is...
I'm your boy, Old C. Hunt, the show's resident youngster here / Vandy superfan, I guess, just for a day.
And they pulled it off last night, man. It wasn't pretty in the second half, but they did get her done, man. They did get her done.
They definitely did, Chris. I mean, it's one of those games we're going to kind of probably get to here in just a bit.
Yes, sir.
Let's kind of take roll here while we get going. We got Mike already up early in the morning. Gators.
Mike?
I'm not going to read the rest of that name there, just because Gators is here. So I like that. He says he was right. The game was more interesting than any other game from yesterday. Yeah, and we kind of felt that way too, right? But it was a tough game, dude. We're gonna kind of cover that here in a bit. Mike says Huskers will trail most of the game, pull it out in the end against Minnesota. 28-27 Skurs on Thursday is what he's got there. It's a football show, but how about volleyball upsets this weekend? Texas goes down, Purdue goes down. Man, I don't.
Texas is pretty legendary at volleyball, but I like the optimism though. Anytime Texas loses, it makes me happy. I'm for it, man. Like I said, I know a little bit about volleyball. We definitely talk about that someday. Like I said, how about my Huskers the other night? They rolled over Utah State. So,
ooh, buddy,
you bet.
I don't even know what volleyball is, son.
Yeah.
So
you barely know anything about football too. So here we are.
There we go. Already with the trolling from this guy who gave you the pick from UTEP and Jacksonville State. Huh?
I know, I don't even. I was so mad. Don't even get me started on that one, man. I lost a little money yesterday. That one hurt. It is what it is. So
Gators runs the East. Says, oh, by the way, Florida does run the East. Florida has won the East 15 times and Georgia has 10. Well, that's good, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's good. It's good to know, man. I hope that statement alone right there, Gators, I hope that's what keeps you warm at night and cozy and gives you hope. Because I was watching the Swamp King documentary, and if you want to feel good, go watch that, right, about the 06 to 09 Gators. And one thing that you'll notice is how far the program has come, right? Because it wasn't that long ago, if you only won or if you lost 3 games in the SEC, you had to worry about getting fired. Now you're coming off a 5-6 win season last year, and we're getting ready to crown Billy Napier the best coach since Urban Meyer. We gotta do better, man. We gotta expect better, and that's the thing this year, man. An 8-win season wasn't that long ago. You guys probably would have fired somebody for less.
Oh, dude. 100%.
And I'm not even.
Gators won 4 games this year. It's a good year for them, man.
And I'm not even saying Georgia's going to win the East this year. I'm not even saying they're going to win a national championship, right? Again, you know by now, as much as we talk on this show, right? I think I'm probably one of the more realistic thinking Georgia fans out there. I'm not a Disney dog or a Florida hater or anything like that. We try to call how we see it. So. That's the great thing about college football, right? We've all talked a lot of shit this offseason, and the good thing is it's here. And we're getting ready to see who's for real and who's not. Chris, talking about who's real and who's not, let's jump in a little bit to this Navy Notre Dame recap here. Kind of give me your thoughts on that game we called yesterday.
Overall, again, I mean, Sam Hartman's going to be talked about now winning the Heisman. I mean, there's already talk. I saw something on ESPN this morning, just how good he looked and stuff. And he did look good. I mean, he did. He played awesome. I think he threw for about 250 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did throw some beautiful passes in that game, though. We will say that. Overall, though, like I said, I expected this game to be a little bit closer. Now, I did take Notre Dame at 21 points, but Newberry with Navy, man, 7 total passes, Christian, in that game? I think they had 1 pass the first 30 minutes of the game. It's just not going to get it done against a game where they knew that they were going to have to play a perfect game, dominate the clock. I'm not saying they didn't run the ball at times well, but you got to be able to throw it a little bit in today's age, just a little bit. Even with that, I know they run that option style, wishbone style of offense. I get that, but there's a reason why very few teams run it it just doesn't work nowadays. You got to be able to throw some wrinkles in there. And what I mean by wrinkles is keep the defense off guard a little bit by throwing the ball, whether it's even a wide receiver screen. I don't know, something. I just didn't get anything working passing the ball at all. The one time they did throw a nice ball, both his receivers ran into each other and didn't look like they knew what the hell was going on. So.
Yeah, you can tell that's a team that definitely did not really practice passing a whole lot this offseason, man.
No.
To me, Chris, we talked about this a little bit before we got on air. It was something I thought about last night, and we've all, if you've ever played football or sports, right, we've all kind of played in a game, I would like to think, where, you get off the bus, and the other team is bigger, stronger, and faster than you, and that is very apparent, right? And that was very apparent last night, too, by the way, in that game. It was an athletic mismatch, I felt as if, and everybody probably knew that, obviously, coming into the game. But the other thing that really shocked me, I think, was the coaching part of it, Chris. I mean, if you have any shot to win a game like that, right, as an underdog, that heavy of an underdog, I mean, your coaching has to be on point. You have to put a game plan together that is going to give you the best chance to at least keep the game close. And I felt like in that game, I'm not saying Navy should have won that game. By no stretch should Navy win that game. If they play that game 100 times over, Navy would be lucky to probably win, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. Maybe even 5 times if you want to be nice, right? Just because every year somebody gets upset. Navy has had a history of upsetting some teams, right? Doesn't happen often, but they do it. So my main point of it is, Chris, I just felt like there was points early in that game where Navy went for it very early, and then the game was still relatively within reach. If you want to say that, within 2 or 3 scores, that Navy should have probably got a little more aggressive and tried to go for it and try to dial some stuff up, and they just decided not to do it. The other thing that was really, I think, kind of apparent was, and we touched on it, if you're going to run that triple option style and you're not going to deviate, which, hey, that's what they recruited, that's what Brian Newberry, the team he took over with, fantastic, you've got to kill the clock. I mean, they were, the first drive that Navy had the ball, Chris, they were snapping the ball with 15, 18 seconds on the play clock. You got to let it run down. I know there's a lot of motions and stuff like that, but that's something you practice all year. You can literally get it down to a sweet science. I mean, in the second half, they went on a drive, I think, where they decided to settle for a field goal that they missed and gave Notre Dame the ball back and let them go up 28-0 at that point. But they took 9 minutes off the clock, dude, by that drive. I mean, They should have tried to play. If you're going to do that, that's how they should have tried to play this whole game. Try to limit Notre Dame and Sam Hartman as much as they could. Again, not saying they should have won that game. I am saying, though, they should have probably covered. That would have been the way I look at that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good breakdown. I mean, but that was what we had said before the game started. If Navy even wants to keep this thing close, they're going to have to control the clock, limit your turnovers, and not let Sam Hartman cook, not put the ball in his hands. I mean, you see it in the NFL a lot. That's what they tried to do with Pat Mahomes, right? Everybody plays the Chiefs tries to do that. Don't let him have the ball. You know what I mean? Obviously there's 2 teams in a game, but you try to limit those possessions. And if Navy wanted to do that, I wasn't very impressed overall with Newberry. I wasn't impressed with the play calling. I know it's week 1. He's a new coach. I understand that. But just the play style, some of the calls I didn't agree with. And just clock management overall, man. I mean, if Navy wanted to even be within this game, and it just didn't happen. They're obviously outmatched. We all knew that too, like you said. So it is what it is, though. I mean, like I said, Notre Dame did look really good for a first game. I think Notre Dame fans are probably more than happy.
I would say so too. I mean, Chris, from a game like this, though, I look at this as a net neutral. If I'm
Right.
just a college football fan, right? Where I don't know, obviously, how good Navy is going to be this year. Again, there was they're going to probably be mismatched in a lot of games that they play. And the coaching, to me, left a little more to be desired, I feel like, in this game. So I don't know how good Navy's going to be this year. Notre Dame looked really good. They did what they were supposed to do.
Exactly.
Right? So that is good that they were able to do that. Mike also brings up a good point here. They ran that 3-3-5 defense.
Yep.
To me, it almost seemed like Navy, again, just to kind of not to beat a dead horse here, kick a dead horse, but to me, there was a couple times in that game where I thought, Navy should have been a little more aggressive. They should have tried to blitz a little more. They should have tried to play a little more man concepts. And I would have let Sam Hartman beat me. I'd have let him throw for 500 yards. If that's what happened, good, right? Good, do that. But they looked like the reincarnation of Jerome Bettis back there with their running backs was just bowling them over.
I mean, Estimate tore them up. Hell, they were running their 4th and 5th string running backs 7, 8 yards a crack. That's at 3-3-5. I personally would have thrown another guy or two in the box. And like you said, just shut down the run, make Hartman beat me. I mean, if he throws for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, so be it. I mean, the guy completed 20 of 24 or something like that for 250 and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was predicated on the run. I mean, they were getting, Jesus, man, I think they averaged literally 7 yards a carry that entire game. That I don't care who you are. It's impossible to win at that rate if they're running the ball and you got 2nd and 3,
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. Like you saw it when and here's something that might be a little concerning. When Navy did dial the pressure up and did play more of those man concepts, they actually kind of blanketed Notre Dame players really well. I mean, and Hartman had to put some damn good passes on the money there, on the out route there, going out of bounds. And then on the next play, obviously, where the safety kind of cheated up and they were running that man and he just dropped it over the bucket to the slot receiver for that touchdown. I believe that was in the 2nd quarter. I mean, that was a damn good throw, but I can live with that. If that's how you're going to beat me, if you're going to play perfect, let's do it, right? But yeah, to me, it's a very interesting, the philosophy of this, and it'll be probably debated a lot more. Chris, speaking of teams that kind of played some non-Power 5 schools here, USC San Jose State as a recap. Let's kind of get into that. That game was a little more interesting, I think, than people probably want to admit.
Well, I will agree with you. I did not get to catch much of this game because I was too involved in that Vandy game starting about 2 hours late with a lightning delay. But when I looked at the score on this, and I've said this, I've came on this show a million times when we talk USC and Lincoln Riley. The guy can't coach defense. I thought USC's defense was supposed to be great. I know this is first game of the season. I get all of that. But they still can't play any defense. I mean, this game was 21-21. It was close. I just don't understand when you're Lincoln Riley and the athletes USC has. I mean, they were supposed to compete with Washington and Utah this year for one of the best defenses. This game did not show it. I mean, here it is. God, I mean, 14-14. USC did obviously score a shit ton in the 3rd quarter there, but they gave up 21 points to San Jose State in the first half almost, and it just looked like one of these games where, USC's going to, they're going to have to outscore you. And you look at the score 56-28. Okay, it was a blowout, but I just don't. If you want to be great, Christian, which I think everybody's expecting USC to be great this year and Caleb Williams, if you want to beat the Georgias of the world in the playoffs, if you can make it, or play, they're going to have to go through Oregon, Washington, Utah, Oregon State, UCLA this year, some of those schools. You're going to have to play some better defense in this against a San Jose State team.
Dude, I agree. I mean, there was some rust there against a team, in San Jose State, right? I get it. They're kind of a good team for what they do, but still, man, I mean, you look at that game going into halftime, it was 21-14 USC.
It was 20.
That was a lot closer than a lot of people would probably have liked. And kind of like you said, I mean, this is the Lincoln Riley special right here.
Yep.
Right. This sets up to me where they come in, they got all the pieces that you'd want, right? They got some transfer players in from the portal to reload and reshuffle. You got a really talented quarterback in Caleb Williams. But to me, Chris, what's different than when he was at Oklahoma, right? I mean, even at Oklahoma, they still lost 1 or 2 games a year that they shouldn't. I mean, he's a 10-11 win guy. He'll get you to the playoffs, but the guy can't close, dude. I mean, that's the thing. He can't close at the biggest level and the biggest stage of the game. For me, the good thing for USC is, with their schedule, it's very backloaded. So they've got a chance to kind of get all these pieces in, get them to hopefully get this stuff figured out, and then they're going on to play a rough stretch. If they continue playing like this, though, dude, it might be they could lose 2 or 3 games. I know a lot of USC fans in particular don't want to hear that. A lot of people are picking them to win the national championship this year. That's the defense we're going to be bringing to the table. And I'm not trying to hit the panic button yet. I just know Lincoln Riley is a coach. He hasn't proven to me on that side of the ball that he can really step up yet. And he's had some good players. I don't know. I think to me this is it's a little more cause for panic than it is anything else, right? I want to see them make those strides going forward in the year and see how that translates.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like I said, I'm not hitting the panic button either. But if you're a USC fan, you got to be a little bit concerned after that game with your defense, not your offense, not Caleb Williams. He played great, but defensively, you know what I mean? Just
yeah,
you can't be giving up those kind of points to, like I said, I mean, a team. And nothing against San Jose State, but I mean, let's be honest here. It's one of these deals where, you know, he needs to shit or get off the pot here on the defense side of the ball. Like, either bring a goddamn coordinator in that knows what he's doing, because they did go out in the transfer portal. They brought a ton of guys in for that defense. But if you're not if you're not going to sit there and these games against Oregon, who they're going to have to play, and Washington, some of these other teams, this is why Utah's beaten them beat them twice last year. I mean, they're personally, with me, I think their defense is soft. And you know who else I think is soft? The Ohio State defense. They kind of remind me, Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley are a lot alike to me. Sorry, Ohio State, man. How you doing today?
He's getting fired up already, right? Dude. He's getting fired up already. Chris, let's kind of, we're going to jump into another game here, right? Obviously, I'm wearing some Vandy swag today.
Yes, sir.
But let's talk about that Vandy Hawaii game, Chris. I mean, I kind of want to say this before we get started on this. Chat, let us know who has the better stadium, right? Jacksonville State or Vandy? Because I think it's a kind of a close toss-up right now. I've been to both their stadiums, and I don't know, man. I think Jacksonville State and Rich Rod might give them a run for their money.
God damn, man. I'll tell you what. They need to get that done. I will say this, though. This game, I watched the first half of this game, the whole first half, and some of the second, but Vandy was moving the ball at will. In this game last year, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 62-10, and I know this isn't last year. Hawaii, second year under Timmy Chang, who, if anybody doesn't know who he is, he's the all-time leader in interceptions in college football, but the guy threw the ball 80 times a game there. The guy could throw the football. And they're doing that now. I mean, Hawaii's not going to change who they are as far as throwing the ball. That's what they did. But to me, Vandy being an SEC school, and maybe that's my problem, is, Vandy came off. They didn't have a bad year last year. They knocked off Florida. Sorry, Florida, man. They knocked off a couple teams. Vandy played a couple teams close. I just thought this game would have been more of a 42 21 type of game, I guess. But Hawaii, man, they went off in the second half. And it was, basically this game came down to the fourth quarter with 4 minutes left. I caught the end of it, but I don't know, going forward, Christian, with Vandy, I mean, do you, all I heard in this offseason from Vandy people was that they're going to be better this year. That they're going to have more talent. They want to compete in the SEC. And no, we're not saying that Vandy's coming on here, winning a conference title or anything like that. But Vandy's been the doormat for a lot of years over there. And I don't think they're a bad program. And I know it takes a lot when you're a cellar dweller for a lot of years to turn it around. But games like this, and I'm not saying Hawaii's a bad team. We'll find out more in the season, obviously. And I think they're definitely a better team than they were last year. But my God, man, I just thought this game should, maybe I'm a little pissed off yet that I lost $50 on this game, but it just thought this thing with the way it was going, Vandy had that kick return right away by that one kid. He's super fast, by the way. He runs like a 10-6 100. I can't think of his name. I thought, okay, 21-7, they're going to blow the doors off Hawaii again. This will be a closer game than last year, but second half, Vandy's the bigger, stronger team. I was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris, I mean, you said it right. I mean, at one point, Vandy was up in the fourth quarter, 35-14, and they let them come back and make it within a one-touchdown game. This to me is one of those situations, obviously, and we kind of knew it too. We got some fans kind of chiming in here, obviously, that this was going to be the game, probably the best game of the weekend.
We said that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I thought UTEP, Jacksonville State actually was probably the best game of the week, which nobody probably had that turned on for too long. I know Gators had it. Well, I know I kind of jumped in there a little bit too, but and Gators was watching that one too. But yeah, I think this to me is a different one here for Vandy. It's going to be, it's good they got a win, obviously, right? Probably, who knows if they would have won this a couple years back, but good for them. They got their first win. They got to be able to be. If they're going to have any shot at winning any games in the SEC this year, Chris, they're going to have to be able to close this game out, man. They're going to have to be able to play defense late, and Clark Lee's got a tough situation, right? I mean, a lot of programs that are in. If you put a lot of programs in that situation of Vandy, you got to get guys playing. You got to have that rotation piece. It's really tough to kind of just say, hey, we're going to put our best players, some 3-star guys, maybe one 4-star guy here and there, but a lot of unknowns out there on the field. and we're going to have them play all 4 quarters. It's really tough in major college football to ask them to do that. So, again, Vandy's going to have to rotate guys in and out. They're going to have to take their lumps, and I think Clark Lee does a good enough job at doing that in some of these games. But I want to see this is a big year for Vandy, right? This is a huge year for them. Can they come in? Can they win another 5 or 6 games this year? That's going to be the biggest question mark for me. I'm not saying they're going to have any shot at winning the SEC or anything crazy like that. We're pulling off an upset against somebody they shouldn't, but can they win 5 or 6 games, dude? That's the consistent record right there for Vandy. I want to see them hit, and that might help them get a little bit better talent in their program.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like I said, it was a good breakdown. Like I said, that was a closer game than expected, but like I said, Vandy's got some work to do. But I will say this: AJ Swan, their quarterback, he can throw the ball.
Yeah, kid can throw the ball.
And they got some Cherokee out of wide receivers, dude. They got some kids out there that can run.
He's from Cherokee High School out there in Georgia, man. That's my neck of the woods down there. Yeah, grew up in Cherokee County, Georgia. So that kid, he can ball out a little bit, man. I mean, like I said, he's young too. I think last year he was a freshman, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So
he threw for a shit ton of yards last year as a freshman too. So
a lot of people are saying, man, he's had the best arm that Vandy's seen since old Cutler was roaming the sidelines down there.
My favorite player on the planet. Yeah.
So got to get that kid some talent. Got to get a defense behind him, and maybe Vandy's got a shot at doing a little something.
Absolutely.
Chris, before we kind of go any further here, we'll kind of jump into some of these comments and just kind of look at it here. Gator Swag was born in South Georgia. That's what I'm talking about down there. A little Savannah, little Valdosta State action right there. So I like that. So,
I'm going to get some Georgia men in here, ain't I?
Well, damn right, son. He's a Gators fan. Well, we adopt them all, man. Like I said, we don't care here. He also said, don't forget, this is a stat that I had to go back and look at. I think I blocked it out here. Yeah, 2016 Vandy
or something like that
beat Kirby in Georgia. There's a lot of parallels here, right? That Florida fans want to draw, obviously, between Georgia and Kirby's first year and Billy Napier's first year there as well. I can see it. Obviously I can see the parallels, the recruiting, everything like that. All I'm going to say is, for the sake of college football, man, we get some really cool Florida fans in here, right? We also get some delusional fans from time to time that are telling us this year they're going to go undefeated and Graham Mertz is going to win the Heisman and all that kind of stuff. And it's a little bold of a take, I think, but yeah, to me, I look at this and, like I said, I like Billy Napier. I hope for Florida's sake they get good again soon, and this doesn't end up being a trap year for him, man. That's kind of what I hope. Here in a minute we're going to break down the Florida-Utah game coming up, and obviously some of the other matchups that are coming up this weekend. We're both excited. Me and Chris are taking the whole weekend off to basically call college football. We're thrilled. So come join us for that, obviously here.
Absolutely.
We'll touch on Mike stuff. USC plays defense like that next year. They won't win a game in the Big Ten. 100% agree. They're going to make it really, really tough.
Big Ten's a whole different style of football. I'm not saying that because my team resides in the Big Ten, but it's a different style of football. There's a lot of physical defense being played in that conference. They probably don't have quite the offense as some of the Pac-12 teams do, but you got to play defense, and it's week in and week out in the Big Ten. That's just how it is.
God, yeah, dude, it's a grind, man. I mean, that's the thing. You see a lot of even transfer quarterbacks that come over to this league or different players, and they either succeed or they don't do much at all. It's a very tough league to play in the Big Ten. There is no doubt about that.
All right.
Here's the other thing too. Maybe Nebraska has better athletes to run the 3-3-5. Obviously, referencing what Navy did. Sometimes it's a scheme thing, man. I mean, again, you can have great athletes. Like you can have, and I'll let Chris talk on this here in just a second. You can have a 300-pound, 325-pound defensive tackle there, stuffing double teams up there. But to me, I don't know. It's tough to kind of run that scheme, especially in a run-heavy league. I mean, you saw kind of what Notre Dame did to Navy, and yes, there was a huge mismatch. I feel about the disparity there, right? I mean, I think Estimate was bigger than most of their defensive tackles at Navy, and he's a running back. So I don't know, Chris. What are your thoughts on the 3-3-5?
I'm not a big fan of the 3-3-5, but that is what Nebraska's going to do. The thing they do with the 3-3-5, though, and I will say this: Nebraska's got a lot more size than Navy does. So that's another thing. We got Ty Robinson on the front line. That's a massive man. He's played a couple years here. I expect a big year out of him. He's going to have a big year if this defense is going to be successful. On top of that, too, we do blitz a guy constantly out of that. So it's kind of a, you got a four-man line instead of a three, even though it's labeled 3-3-5. We ran something very similar to that in high school, actually, believe it or not, at times. So Nebraska, like I said, got better athletes, better size there. That's the big key, though, if you do run that 3-3-5. Your front three got to be getting pressure, and your nose guard can't be getting blown off the ball. Navy's nose guard yesterday, that poor guy was blown 3-4 yards off the ball almost every play. Me and Christian were watching that. So, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of 3-3-5, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to see how pans out against the Minnesota team. We'll talk about that here in a minute.
I'm personally more a fan of the 4-2-5 or a 5-2, right? You know, that's kind of my preference there, trying to kind of overload that line so it makes teams have to throw the ball on you.
Exactly.
You know, running more of that man up sort of play there. Just because, I mean, in today's college football, you got to be able to get pressure on. It's like the NFL, right? The best defense, the best way to avoid coverage is these quarterbacks will pick you apart. We watched Hartman do that yesterday when they were running those zone concepts. I mean, guys were wide open. Like the nearest defender was probably 8, 9, 10 yards away from him because they're running zone concepts. So you got to be able to get pressure. You got to be able to affect them from that standpoint. And I'm a big proponent, especially if you've got that size, like you talked on, Chris. You got a couple, 300 plus hog mollies up there. Dude, run the 4-2-5. On obvious running downs, right? Try to bring in a 5-2 look to it. And if a team's going to beat you, with a play over the top, let them do that. I mean, again, just try to bend, don't break, but try to get some pressure. Let them know you're there. That's my take on it.
Nope, couldn't agree more.
Mike also says, either of you been to the Smurf turf at Boise State? That field makes it hard to watch a game there. Chris,
you like it probably?
No. I mean, I think it's cool to watch, like if you're watching like on television, but if you're watching that game, like wasn't Boise State the one that had a guy like hidden in the end zone, like he laid down and then like on a kickoff return or something like that, and he ended up like taking one back to the crib. I think it was
them. There's a couple stadiums out there that got like one college. I don't know if they're D1 or D1 or D2, but they got like an all red field. I know what play you're talking about. I don't know if that was with Boise State. I'm like Mike here. I personally can't stand watching a game in that stadium. I don't know what it is about the blue turf. I have never been there though. I will say it's iconic. I mean, everybody knows when they see that field who the hell it is. I'll say that.
Dude, I think it's it's a very interesting thing. I mean, probably going to the stadium and watching it's got to be very, very tough because everything kind of probably blends together. Watching it on TV is kind of cool though. Eastern Washington, they got that red turf.
Yeah, that's the one.
Gator swag says so. I mean, it's a little different there.
Yeah.
I'm a fan for it, man. Little different wrinkles and stuff like that. That's what makes college football so unique here. Gator Swag says, I'm very excited about this week. Florida plays 2 better games. Here we go. Let's see it. Oh, Florida plays, and then number 2, it's better games. Yeah, dude, I mean, I agree with you, man. It's much better football. This is the real start of college football this week. You got some primetime games actually kicking off this week.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, just from us, like yesterday was kind of tough. Ooh. And I was talking with Chris about this a little bit too. From calling that game, I mean, obviously we would have hoped that it was a lot closer of a game. Like, and even if that was TCU Colorado, right? And Colorado is getting blown out of the game, I love that. Just because of all the shit the Colorado fans are talking, dude. I mean, that to me, that's gonna be. I don't care if that game's 88-0 in the third quarter. We'll stay on probably an hour after the show is done, just to be able to continue talking shit to Colorado fans, because we've heard nothing about. Chris, I'll let you touch on that. I mean, about what we've heard about Colorado this year.
Oh, dude, this delusional fan base and these Deion Sanders fanboys. I don't know how much more I can take. I really don't, man. Man, we've gotten emails and people dropped in the chat and comments on YouTube that it's just unbelievable, the delusion coming from that fan base. Like I said, I don't think it's all Colorado. I don't. There's some realistic ones in there, but man, I know that's like every fan base, but some of these people are really loud, really bold with their takes. Christian saying 9-10 wins. Let's just win 3. Let's just keep it there. You know what I mean?
Let's just kind of, like you said, let's try to get to a bowl before we start. Let's get to a bowl game before we start talking about winning the Pac nothing anymore and doing all this kind of shit. Yeah, the Pac-4. All right, chat. We threw one in there at you. What's stud NFL player for Eastern Washington Gators, so I got it right. Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, you had to Google that though, didn't you? You did.
Well, you put a question mark there. Hey, even if you had to Google, it's still impressive, right?
A
I mean,
lot of people don't know that. It was one of those quiz questions when you said Eastern Washington. I was like, man, Cooper Kupp played there.
he did, didn't he? All right, Chris. Well, let's jump into this. We're going to get the Florida man all happy or riled up today, just depending. We'll get it right out the rip here. Florida versus Utah. The preview. This game is coming on, obviously, on Thursday. Chris, I'll kind of let you jump in here. What are your thoughts on the game?
Utah. I'll talk about them, Christian. There has been this line movement on this game has been nuts the last week. I don't know if you've been paying attention to that or if anybody bets, but I think it's opened at like 8.5 this year, and it was down to 2.5 at one point because they don't know if Cam Rising's playing and or the second quarterback. This game is kind of crazy here. Here's my thing. If Cam Rising plays, I expect him to play. If you guys don't know who Cam Rising is, he is about identical to Max Duggan at TCU last year. He's a tough kid. He's a winner. I love guys like that. He's actually one of my favorite quarterbacks in the country, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying this because I'm hating on Florida. Just if you have never got an opportunity to watch this kid play, he had a terrible leg injury last year. It's kind of plagued his career. I think he's got to be like a fifth-year senior by now. He's played a lot of football. Kid's a hell of a player, though. I'll say that. So if he plays this game, for me, is key for Utah in this game. Utah, to me, is the more physical team. I know that's going to piss the Florida guys off. Florida does have a lot more talent, probably necessary. They probably do recruiting-wise, but a lot of those guys are super young. Utah's a physical team. They've won the Pac-12 the last 2 years, Christian. I swear this team gets no hype. Nobody talks about them. Everybody wants to talk about USC. Everybody wants to talk about Oregon and Bo Nix and even Washington this year with Michael Penix Jr. Hell, even Oregon State, I've seen them higher ranked in the preseason polls than Utah, and it's just amazing to me. This team just gets no love. And I actually, Utah's my favorite Pac-12 team just because they play more physical style brand over there. Yeah. But like I said, if Cam Rising plays this game, that's a big question for me. Utah is going to be able to be more physical, I think, on the offensive side of the ball against, everybody's going to tell me Florida's defense is supposed to be much more improved this year. We've heard that a bunch of times. That's why the spring game looked like shit. And then I'll say this, Christian, I'll probably let you touch a little bit on Florida here since you're the Florida man all the time. But if Cam Rising plays this game, I don't see this game within 14 points. I know that's a bold take, but I don't. I took the points and Utah in this game. I just don't see how this game's close if Cam Rising plays. This is at Utah, by the way, and I do know Florida. That's what you're going to tell me. Florida they beat them in the swamp last year. That's what you're going to tell me.
Yeah, I think that, again, Chris, I mean, you touched on it very, very well there. I think, the biggest thing for Florida that I've got is, can the Gators, they ranked 95th last year in total defense. Are they going to be able to show rapid improvement with new defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong, who's regarded as one of the top assistants in all of college football? Obviously, Nick Saban wanted him, and he was there for, I don't know, a month or whatever, and then he ended up bolting for Florida. Right. But, can they take advantage of what will potentially be a backup quarterback situation should Cam Rising not be able to go in this one, right? There's a lot of mystery still shrouded in that right there. The next question we talk about with Florida, Chris, is how's Graham Mertz going to fare in this top 25 matchup, by the way? Obviously, Utah's ranked number 14 in the country. By the way, for Florida fans out there, Mertz has ranked dead last in almost all passing stats against top 25 teams while at Wisconsin. The running game for me, for Florida, they should be good in the running game. I mean, they're really solid. Obviously, they've got two awesome running backs, and Etienne and Johnson there. I think they're going to be able to kind of be able to keep running the ball and kind of do that, where they want to against Utah. I don't have any qualms about that. To me, the biggest question mark, obviously, is going to be they've got a new look offensive line, right? A lot of those guys didn't play in the spring game, so it was very different. I think they were struggling to kind of get snaps off. Again, that was because they had a freshman center snapping the ball there at certain parts of the game. But again, how's that offensive line going to hold up against the number 14 team in the country, Utah? They lost some pieces from last year's defense. I get all of that. There's some big question marks again throughout this game for me for the Gators. I'm not hating on them. I'm just kind of doing this because obviously we know that Florida can come out and look really good in this game, or they can come out and get more or less the same, but with what we saw last year, Chris. What are your final score predictions for this game?
I think I have something around I'm going to go 35-20. maybe 21, something like that. I just don't, even if Cam Rising doesn't play, I still think Utah wins this game by 10 or more. I truly do. I just, at home, Utah's a tough place to play. Florida's got to travel there. You said it best. And you know my thoughts on Graham Mertz. I mean, we've gotten into some debates about this, and I've seen a lot of Graham Mertz at Wisconsin. I don't think Graham Mertz is very good. I think Anthony Richardson was a way better quarterback than Graham Mertz. We're going to find out this year. If I'm Florida, I rely heavily on my running backs, Etienne and those guys. And if their defense is, you said it best, you brought up stat, 90-something last year? I mean, they got to be better. I don't care who the hell's back there for quarterback for Utah this year in this game. Got to be much more improved. So I'm going to say again, I'm going to say somewhere around a 35-21, maybe a 28-17 type of game. I still think it's even more than that. I just think Utah's offense, if Cam Rising does play, I'll bump that up another touchdown. But Christian, what's your thoughts? And you got to be bold here and give me a prediction here. We don't talk about this game near enough.
Yeah, to me, I look at it like you said. I mean, I got Utah 28, Florida 14. I think that, again, I understand Florida is going to be much more improved. Again, the only thing you can really base this off of is that spring game, right? I think Florida will be better on defense, but again, you got to also put stock into the offense too. I think Florida will probably struggle to move the ball at certain points of this game. I think they'll probably put up a couple touchdowns, even if Cam Rising's not able to go in this one. It's going to be really tough because, I mean, Utah's backup, he played a little bit last year and he didn't look too bad, right? I mean, obviously, I think he was third on the depth chart this year. Their second string guy got hurt too. Still, they've got a shot here. Give me Utah on this one, Chris. I know we've got some fans here. I'll kind of kick this over right now to one of the fan comments I saw from Gator Swag. He says, here's a question for you. If Florida goes and wins this game, do you think they deserve more respect? Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, even if, and I know a lot of fans will sit there and say, they'll take the easy way and say, well, if Cam Rising's hurt and plays the game, or if, he doesn't play, I mean, it's still a top 14 team. I mean, Utah, even without Cam Rising, I think they're still slotted to finish somewhat high in the Pac-12 out there, right? Yep. And that's kind of hard to say seriously. But again, the Pac-12 is going to be a decent-ish conference this year, right?
They're top heavy.
I mean, they're very, very top heavy. So I think it's still a top 15 win. It starts the year off right if you're Florida.
Yeah.
And it would definitely be more impressive than beating Hawaii. I can tell you that for damn sure.
I'll say this. If Florida wins this game, I'll be impressed. I'll come on air. Like I said, I'll admit when I'm wrong, but I'll be impressed. That means Graham Mertz played well. If Florida, that's the key to me for Florida. If I'm a Florida man and you want to win this football game, I mean, okay, you can say your defense has improved, and that's great. But Graham Mertz is going to have to prove to me that he can play quarterback in a big game. I didn't see it at Wisconsin last year. I mean, he's played some football. This guy isn't a true freshman out here, and this kid was highly touted out of high school too. So if Florida wins, I think it depends on a lot of Graham Mertz. Can he deliver the football? He's had a history of turning it over. Utah's a very physical team. They are. They're not your typical Pac-12 defense. I will tell you that. Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'll do to make this interesting here, because we talked a lot of trash. I have no some of my best friends in life are Florida fans. So, which is always a little different being a Georgia fan, but it comes with part of the culture, right? I mean, there's Georgia fans down in Florida and vice versa. So I think, for me, if Florida does win this game, I'll buy a Florida hat and I'll wear it for a show.
Woo!
I think that'll be what I'll do. That'll be my homage to the Gators.
I like it. I'll hold you to that then.
So, all right, kind of moving on here, Chris. Nebraska, Minnesota, right? This is a very interesting game here for us, Chris. Nebraska, Minnesota. What are your thoughts on this one?
For the Nebraska man, I'll speak about the Huskers here. I've said it all offseason. I think I've said it, and I'll say it one more time here. This game is super important to not only Nebraska fans, but just, I think, the public's perception of us going forward this year with Matt Rule, right? Here's the thing. This isn't an easy game for Nebraska. It's not. It's at Minnesota. They've beaten us the last 4 times. Minnesota is one of those teams that will not beat themselves. They've proven that under PJ Fleck since he's gotten there. They're not a super fun team to watch. Mo Ibrahim, thank God, isn't there anymore, so he can't get 40-plus carries against us like he always does. But this game, to me, for Nebraska, is won or lost on the front line. Minnesota is probably one of the top 5 biggest offensive lines in the country, Christian. I mean, these guys bigger than you, and you're a big man. But I mean, these guys are 6'6", 330, physical. They want to run the ball right down your throat. I don't see a lot changing this year for Minnesota. I really don't. I mean, they're going to plug and play a running back there. They do have a new quarterback. Tanner Morgan isn't there anymore. You know, this kid that I can't think of his name. He's got like a Russian last name. But they're going to throw the ball, they said, a little bit more with him. Okay, fine. But can we get pressure then? And that's Nebraska's biggest problem the last couple years for me is defensively up front. We had maybe 5 sacks last year as a team, I swear, and 4 of those were in the Iowa game. I'm not worried about Jeff Sims. I'll make the case for him that I think he's going to have a big year this year, but this is also his first game with a new team coming from Georgia Tech. This is Matt Rule's first game on the road with a new team in Nebraska. A lot of question marks here. A lot of people, you know, I know I've seen a lot of predictions on this game. We're 7.5-point dogs or 7. I think it's 6.5 now. I have Nebraska winning this game. I've kind of changed my take on this. But I think Nebraska is going to have to limit turnovers, and if they can be physical, front line and defensive line, O-line and defensive line, they can hang in this game. I think it's going to be a very close game. I don't think it's going to be super high scoring by any means. And we'll do a little prediction here in a second. But, Christian, what's your thoughts on this? You can give me, you know, I'm a little biased because I'm a Nebraska man. So,
sure.
You know, you watch a lot of other football. You're from the SEC. What's your thoughts, takes on this game?
It's like you said, too. I mean, it's like me with Georgia. Sometimes you got to be able to remove a little bit of bias and be able to look at this and kind of say, okay, you know, what realistically can we do in it? I'm going to cover the Minnesota aspect of it for you. And if you're a Nebraska or Minnesota fan, you can either be happy or upset, depending. But the way I look at it, you know, PJ Fleck, you know, he's kind of a unique guy in his own right. To me, he's a good coach, right?
He's a different cat, though. Man,
he's a different guy, dude. But I mean, he loses Mo Ibrahim, you know, who's the program's leading rusher, as well as 3 of their interior offensive linemen. So, I mean, the Golden Gophers are going to be looking to dial up more of that passing game this year than they have in years past. So, you know, Tanner Morgan, you touched on it, Chris. He's not there anymore, and they're going to turn the job over to I think if I'm saying this right, Athan Kalaic Manis, who had 3 touchdowns to 4 interceptions last year in 10 games. And he also had a QBR of 75.7. So, you know, the kid was, again, I mean, he was young. I mean, he's a young kid last year. So this is, to me, this is going to be interesting to see how that offense kind of rolls. But here's the other thing. I mean, this kid had over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns with no turnovers. Against a very tough Wisconsin defense last year. So he kind of flashed and did some things where you're like, all right, I mean, this kid can ball out and play a little bit. You know, they're going to also have a preseason All-American and tight end Brevin Spanford early. You know, and they're going to try to get him involved in this game very early and often, I think. Here's the thing, and this is what makes it tough, and you kind of alluded to it, Chris, was, I mean, their defense. I mean, they finished ranked 9th last year in total defense. And they're going to try to replicate that, you know, similarly, right? Try to be a top 25 defense again this year. I mean, they lost a lot of key pieces off that defense. I think for me, I'll give you my final score prediction for it. Against my better judgment, give me Nebraska 38, Minnesota 21.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Holy shit. Wow. That's, wow. 38 points. No, I hope you're right. I have it being a 24-21 or 27-24 late game field goal. And I could see us losing that way too. I do. I think this game's low scoring, man. I don't think if they hit 50 total, I think I'll be surprised. I know you got a little more points being scored this game, but I just think, like you said, I agree with you. A lot of this comes down to the front line play of Nebraska. Yeah. If they're going to play defense like they did last year, they're going to get their ass kicked here. You know, I truly believe that. Minnesota, like I said, if you guys haven't checked out their offensive line, man, they're massive and they reload every year. And like Christian said, they have a great tight end. I forgot about him too. They're a very physical team. They don't wow you. They're not going to spread you out. They pass the tight end, play action pass, run the ball down your throat. It's a very simple concept, but it's tough to stop, man. That's Big Ten play though, Christian, and you know that.
I actually think, you know, I watched a little bit of their spring game. I actually think they are going to try to spread out a little more.
I think so.
And that to me is just, I mean, we see it all the time, right? I mean, again, I'm not trying to draw parallels between too many different teams, but like you watch it with teams like Georgia Tech, for example, they ran that triple option style. Then with Jeff Collins coming in there, he tried to switch everything up, and you saw how that kind of went. Especially now with that rule change of in college football where the clock's going to continuously run. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. I mean, a team can come in if they're very run heavy, like Nebraska, and be able to just run the ball and take 9-10 minutes off the clock on a drive. And that kind of, to me, that makes it a lot harder, especially when you're changing your offensive identity up and you're putting more pressure on your quarterback to have it. We got to have it, right? So if they don't click early, Nebraska can get in there, get some pressure, and kind of make some stops in this game. Chris, give me Nebraska for an upset, and I think It might be a statement first win there for Matt Rhule.
Well, I hope you're right, buddy. I hope you're right. I hope I'm right. Regardless, we can get a W. It would be huge for Nebraska's season. So, yeah, love your take, though. Love it.
All right, Chris, a little TCU versus Colorado preview here. This is the one that I think we're most excited to see what happens in this game. Chris, what do you think?
I'd love to make the case for the Colorado, man, but Christian, it's tough. I don't see how this, for one, TCU is a 21-point favorite in this game. Try saying that to the Colorado man, or the ones I speak to anyway. This game will have a ton of clout behind it simply because of Deion Sanders. I think you guys already know that. The big thing with Colorado is with this revamped roster. I mean, the whole roster is almost completely torn apart. New guys, transfers. Yeah, you bring in a couple 5-stars, kids. You got Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, and like I said, I've said this a million times. Doesn't mean that these kids aren't going to be good. I think that they're good athletes, but this game, we've said this, Christian, a shit ton of times. It got laughed off the internet almost. Colorado's offensive defensive line looks small to me. I've said it. I'm going to say it again. They look small in the spring game, if you want to call that glorified track meet that was. I don't see how they even stack up against TCU. I know people are going to tell me Max Duggan isn't there. Quentin Johnson is playing over with the Chargers, by the way. He's looking really good this preseason. They lose him. Yeah. They're big-time wideout. They lose a bunch of pieces off the defensive side of the ball from last year. I get all that, but TCU isn't a bad football team. They weren't a bad football team before the season started. Sonny Dykes is a hell of a coach. This game, to me, honestly, I'll be surprised if this thing is even close in the third quarter. I have TCU by 28 at least. I just don't see how this works for Colorado this year. The schedule they have, by the way, is brutal to even start the season off with TCU. Then they turn around and got to play Nebraska. And then you get in the heart of that Pac-12 school, excuse me. I like I said, if Colorado, they're just outmatched in every game. I'm sorry. And that doesn't mean Deion Sanders is going to be a bad coach, Christian. We've said that too. But you got to give this guy some time, get his guys in there. And like I said, the Pac-12 did these guys no favors on the schedule, man.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you're absolutely not wrong here. From the TCU side of things, though, I mean, look, dude, the Chandler Morris era is beginning there for the second time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because he actually beat out Max Duggan last year to start the year off, got hurt, and then obviously we kind of saw what happened there. I've seen from a lot of anonymous coaches, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, they were scared more of Chandler Morris because of that run threat that he kind of brings to the table there, which can kind of that's probably why he gets hurt, a little more there, right? So Colorado is going to be in trouble early in this game. I mean, the offense, you touched on it. They've lost some players out there. Quentin Johnson, obviously, they lost, some running backs, some different players, obviously, from that team. But, Chris, here's the thing. They're still in great hands. They got some Bama transfers and JoJo Earl, Trey Sanders coming in that are going to make some big plays. I mean, those guys were 4 or 5-star guys, if I'm not mistaken, in their own rights. They're going to be able to kind of, athletically, they've got athletes that are going to be able to compete against, some of those players that Colorado brought out there. So, and I think they're going to make them look silly. Dude, honestly, I think they will make them look silly. All right? The O-line also gets back 3 starters, and they added some plug-and-play transfers that should maul the Buffs front 7. You touched on it. They look small. I think you're going to see some bigger guys than what you saw in the spring, obviously. But, again, a lot of those guys were playing at, a group of 5 schools last year, or losing teams, or were backups in different conferences. So, to me, it's going to be a little bit different. Also in the defense, right, they should take a step forward this year while getting back 8 starters from that defense. And they're going to feast on Colorado's offensive line, Chris.
I agree. Shedeur Sanders can be running for his life in this game, man. He's a hell of an athlete, but I don't know. I don't know how you're going to be able to keep up with TCU's defense.
Absolutely. Chris, what are your final score predictions for this one?
I have this game. I have this game pegged at like 42 to, Colorado could get a couple touchdowns in the fourth quarter if this thing gets out of hand early. So I could see maybe that's the only way I think there's like a backdoor cover on this thing. But I truly think this is going to be a 42-17 type of game, 49. I think TCU is going to be able to score at will, personally. And I just don't see how Colorado can keep up. I just don't. That has nothing to do with you can have great athletes out on the edge with Travis Hunter and all these guys. But again, you're going to have to be able to run the football. You can't be one dimensional. That never works. I just don't. Colorado to me, they just need more time. They need more players. They need more size. And we talk about this too, gelling together as a unit. Colorado was the worst Power 5 school last year by far. They won one game.
Yeah.
If they win 2 this year, they should be happy. 3 at most.
Well, I think it's like you said, Chris. It's one of those things where, college football now is, especially with what's going on at Colorado and some of these other programs, is it's turned into glorified free agency, right? And you see it a lot of times, and we touched on this a couple episodes ago, where like even the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of recent note, where they kind of got a bunch of guys through free agency with Tom Brady, some of these other guys and their cats out there. They took a while to kind of get on the same page, and this is big time college football here we're talking. So for Colorado fans and the fans that think Deion's going to have them obviously competing very early, it's going to take them a lot more time, dude. Against a team that, again, had a coach that got him to the national championship game last year, got blown off the face of the earth by Georgia. But still, I think I'm very similar in your sentiment here, Chris. Give me TCU 48, Colorado 24.
Awesome. Yeah.
Real quick here, too, before we go over to the next side here, we'll kind of pause just for a second, kind of hit up some of the chat here. I mean, they're talking about the same thing here. Gator Swag says TCU wins 100-0. Mike says, give me TCU by 28. They're going to run Deion off the field. Here's another interesting one. Deion should be the head coach at Georgia. You don't want that. I'm telling you right now. If Deion went to Georgia, the Atlanta Falcon ties those days, they wouldn't even be close. I mean, that man would get the best recruiting class every single year. Do I think he goes to Georgia? No. Right? I think, to me, the better fit is, especially if Florida State shits the bed this year and they lose 2 or 3 games and that fan base gets pissed and Deion has a bad year. Could I see something down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road, where Deion jumps to Florida State? I could see that more. I think that's more of a natural fit for him. Either way, if you hand Deion the keys to a major Power 5 program, he's going to get some kids to come play for him, dude. I mean, he will get some kids to come play for him. Again, I think a lot of that will depend on, obviously, what he's going to do in the next 2 or 3 years at Colorado. I think he'll obviously, especially with them going over to the Big 10 next year, or the Big 12, I should say, next year, they're going to be in a much, much better spot.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. No, 100%, man. Like I said, if he's ever going to go somewhere, it'll be Florida State, his alma mater. Then he can recruit the shit out of those kids down in Florida because everybody loves him there, which as it should. I was a big Gators fan, so I mean, the guy can recruit. There's no doubt about it. He's a polarizing figure too, man, and he's a player's coach.
Yeah, he's kind of touched on it too. I mean, that's the thing that Deion's got to be able to do at some point. He's got to be able to get elite, lines of scrimmage players in there. Offensive line, defensive linemen that kind of come in there, and that's the big thing I'm waiting on, right? When's he going to get, and it may happen next year, dude. I mean, again, it may happen this offseason sometime where he gets some highly touted, defensive tackle or pass rusher that comes in there that can kind of change that fortune for Colorado. So we'll see, though, right? I mean, we're absolutely going to see. All right, kind of jumping ahead here. South Carolina and UNC preview, Chris. By the way, in the chat, let us know what you think here about this game. Who wins? This is kind of a slept-on matchup. It's one that everyone kind of overlooks a little bit. God. But anyways, South Carolina, UNC, Chris, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts here, man, and I'll make a case for UNC here. You said it best. I was going to start this out with. It was this game is super slept on, man. It's weird. I know there's a lot of other good games. This coming up week, there's a shit ton of great games, but not this game is not getting near the hype I think it should be. But here we got an SEC school going against, obviously, probably a top 3 team in the ACC. A lot of people have UNC relatively high. The AP's got them, I think, at 21st up there. I have North Carolina being relatively good this year. My big thing is, we know Drake May is going to come out. And if you haven't watched this kid play, he makes about 1 or 2 throws a game that are just jaw dropping. This is what he does. To me, it's going to be between him and Caleb Williams this year, who's the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. These two are awesome at everything. But my big thing with North Carolina, Christian, in this game, and we don't have to look too far, and you know where I'm going with this. Can Mac Brown get a defense over there? These guys gave up over 30 points a game last year. I believe they were like 103rd in the country out of 131 teams on defense.
Yeah,
it's just not enough. Even in the ACC, I mean, the ACC is so top heavy. I think it's kind of Clemson, Florida, and there's a big gap between kind of everybody else in that conference. North Carolina is that fringe team, a team that we know is going to put up points. They got a ton of weapons. They got a great wide receiver room. Mac Brown is a good coach. We all know who he is and what he did at Texas in his long time there. But, God, they got to play some defense, man. I mean, this game, especially against Spencer Rattler, who is very up and down. When he's at his peak, he's just as good as a Drake May or a Caleb Williams. But then we watched him last year, Christian, in some of those games where he looks like a guy that probably should be a third-string, backup JV quarterback, honestly. I mean, he turns the ball over sometimes just sporadically. This game to me is very interesting. I want to hear your thoughts in your case here, Christian, and before we give our predictions.
Yeah, so for South Carolina, I mean, the biggest question mark, I think, is going to be, which Spencer Rattler are you going to get in this game, right? Last year, he was very up and down. But, man, when he's on, this kid looks like a legit first-round draft pick, Chris. 100%. I mean, the way he kind of lit up in, Tennessee and Clemson last year. Yeah. I mean, this kid can ball, right? But he's got to be on, and that's the thing. I mean, you just don't know from week to week which one you're going to get. They're also getting back their top wideout from last year in Juice Wells. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, Dowell Loggins, from Arkansas. And he also brings in a very talented tight end, and Trey Knox, also from Arkansas, with him. Probably get him involved very early and often. Here's the thing, Chris, right? Offensive line play. They got a ton of question marks, as does the run game for me in this one. And that's very hard, obviously, to get something going. Can Loggins get the running game back on track for South Carolina enough to take that pressure off of Rattler, especially against North Carolina, Chris? That's going to be the biggest question mark to me, right? South Carolina's defense, I mean, they had a very good secondary last year, right? And they're going to be, I mean, they were legit a good secondary. But the problem with their defense, Chris, and this is something you touched on, this game is going to come down to defense, I think, obviously. Who can get at least a stop in this game? Yep. The run was really where they got kind of gashed last year. They ranked 117th in rushing defense last year. Whew. I mean, that's not going to cut the mustard at all. No. So I don't care what conference you're in. The good news, though, right, is it's a new year, and UNC finished ranked 67th in rushing offense, right? So obviously, like you touched on, Chris, UNC is going to probably come in here and try to probably throw the ball a little more. So that might kind of play a little bit better there. We touched on it. South Carolina beat Clemson last year, and Clemson blew out UNC in the ACC championship game. Obviously, it's a new year. A lot of different factors are kind of playing in there, right? Give me in this game UNC 38, South Carolina 45.
Woo! Holy shit. You got to track me. And I thought maybe you were going to go the other way there. I'm taking South Carolina in this game, and I'm taking it 38-35. I think this game, and it could be higher scoring than that.
Yeah.
Again, if South Carolina can run the ball a little bit, that's one of their biggest problems too, is that they rely on Rattler to pretty much do everything. That'll make it a little bit easier for them in this game. They're going to have to put up points with UNC. I think UNC finishes like a top 15 offense last year as far as points per game and yardage game. I mean, they throw a shit ton with Drake May. And like I said, if you guys haven't watched Drake May, I suggest watching him play. This kid can throw the football. Mac Brown's always been known to have great offenses. I don't see anything changing this year for UNC. The only problem is, like I said, can they stop anybody? If their defense looks like it did last year, this SC is going to roll them here. I truly believe that. So I'm going to say 38-35. I think it comes down to the wire. I think it'll be a close game. Yeah. It could be a shootout like you're saying too, where you're getting in the 40s, something like that. This game will be fun to watch. I don't have any dogs in this game, but it's going to be a fun football game to watch, Christian.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I mean, just like you said, I mean, it's one of those games where this is what college football is about. Watching games like this where it's a very back and forth shootout style game where It's just an interesting game to watch, right? And either way, you probably, unless you're a South Carolina or UNC or Mac Brown fan here, you're probably okay with whatever, so long as it's a damn good game.
Exactly.
I will say this here, Gator Swag, real quick, and then we'll jump into the last couple games we've got to preview here. He's got a big upset he wants to talk about. South Carolina upsets Georgia 34-28. This is something we've touched on the show here, right? Like I said, I'm a realistic Georgia fan, not a Disney dog, as they like to say. I'll keep it a buck with you here. It could happen. South Carolina is a team that historically gives Georgia fits, especially early in the season. You look at who we play early in the year. We don't really play anybody until South Carolina. So you're really not going to know, what can Carson Beck do? Obviously, he's more talented than Stetson Bennett, but Bennett obviously is one of those guys that defies all the metrics and all the odds, right? So, and we really don't know what Carson Beck can do because we've only seen him in blowout games where he hands the ball off, he throws some, meaningless passes against probably second or third string defenses here. To me, again, this is one of those games where, South Carolina, man, if Georgia comes out flat in that game, and they had a game last year against Missouri where they did it, and Missouri should have beat us. I picked this is one of my 3 trap games on Georgia's schedule. Even though they say Georgia's got an easy schedule this year, it's a trap game on there where South Carolina, Tennessee, or Ole Miss have a shot at legitimately knocking off Georgia this year.
Yeah, I don't quite see it happening the way you do, Christian. The only way I could see South Carolina being in this game, Spencer Rattler is going to have to play the best game of his life against that Georgia defense. The way you guys get to the quarterback is insane. That would also mean South Carolina's got to be able to keep them honest and run the ball halfway efficiently in that game. I don't see it happening, although I agree with you. South Carolina is they're one of those teams that could upset a lot of teams. They could, but they also could turn around and shit the bed against somebody, like a Vandy or something if they don't show up. South Carolina is they have a history of playing you guys tough. And this game, I think, will be closer than what the experts say or think. But I don't see it happening with Georgia this year. I just don't. If South Carolina had a little bit more returning starters coming back, something like that, maybe. But again, I think it's going to be a close game. I do. I think if Georgia gets down early, let's say South Carolina gets the ball and scores right away, and you guys, Carson Beck, he obviously is his first year starting, throws an early interception, they get down maybe a 14-3 or something like that. Holy shit. Then you're in for a dogfight of a football game. And trust me, we've seen stranger shit happen in college football. But no, it's a good question. It's not like, this isn't like a super hot take. I mean, I could see that being a good game for Georgia this year. I truly could. But I overall, I just don't see it happening overall. I think Georgia's just a more talented team. We got the better coach. I'm going to have to side with Georgia. And I think this game is probably within, I don't know what the spread will be at that point, but I could see it a 2-touchdown game, but I think it'll be very close. And it's going to be a good game regardless. Like you said, Georgia don't play a lot of tough teams. This is one of them, though. I agree.
Yeah, I'll say this to kind of wrap it up on this, and we'll jump into some more previews here. But I'll say this, dude. I think South Carolina is a team that, would it shock me if they beat either UNC or Georgia? No. Would it shock me if they beat both of them? Yes. Yes. I will say this. They will beat one of those teams, but they will not beat both of them.
Interesting. Okay. We got that on the tape then.
Yeah.
No, we can move on here. No, good call though. Good comment.
All right, LSU versus FSU, the preview, Chris. I'll start us off here. I'll take the LSU side, and I'll kind of break them down here. Chris, to me, this is going to be very interesting. LSU's one of their best defensive players, not named Harold Perkins, defensive tackle Mason Smith. He's been suspended for this game.
Yes.
Right? And how much of a difference maker does that make in this game? The good news for LSU, though, is they're going to get back 8 starters on offense, including Jaden Daniels and all 5 linemen, right? They have weapons in the passing game to take that next step, and they can keep up with FSU in that secondary. To me, and we kind of touched on this guy, Harold Perkins, one of the best defensive players in the country. I mean, he's going to look to lead this defense, and they even have Mekhi Wingo. They can step up and play that other defensive tackle spot. I think he's kind of played himself as a fringe All-American, in the loss of Mason Smith. So, but can they step up and do enough to kind of get that stop and slow down Jordan Travis and Florida State early in this one. That's the biggest question mark. Especially if the front seven does well, then that should take off a lot more pressure on that secondary. Obviously, LSU's been known as DBU forever, right? Wide receiver U, DBU, whatever you want to call it. To me, for LSU, the biggest question mark is going to be, can they set that tone in the front seven and take some pressure off of that secondary? There, Chris. What do you think about Florida State in this?
I'll tell you what, man. I've been on it. I'm not going to jump off the ship. I'm high, very high, on my Florida State Seminoles this year, Christian. The big thing here in this game, we all know that game was an ugly, ugly game last year. Florida State pulled it out. It was an early game. Same thing with this year. This game, in my opinion, judging, we got LSU ranked at, 5th. A lot of people have them making the playoffs, potentially beating Georgia this year. They have the talent. We know that about LSU. LSU is a powerhouse program. Florida State, is this finally the year they live up to the hype? They bring back Jordan Travis, right? We know how good he is. I don't have to sit here and explain to anybody how talented this kid is. The big thing that I love about Florida State, though, they got 6'7" Johnny Wilson out there, dude. This guy's a monster of a man at wide receiver. They brought in Michigan State transfer Keon Coleman, dude. I watched a lot of him play. He's a talented kid. And they also got a really, really, really good tight end, Jaheim Bell from South Carolina. Florida State needs to be able to throw the football. Jordan Travis, we all know, can run it. He's dual threat. He's high octane. Yeah, and you're going against a good LSU defense. Brian Kelly's always had good defenses too. Even before he got there, LSU's defense has always been pretty goddamn legit. So the big question to me in this game is, how does LSU's secondary, you touched on, if they get pressure, Jordan Travis can be in for a long day. You give him time back there to break you down, and if he gets outside the pocket, I don't know how LSU can match up against some of these Florida State guys. I mean, Florida State's got one of the best wide receiver corps in the country, so that'll be a matchup to watch just inside the game.
Yeah.
The big thing for me here, though, is this game, as I was saying, we're going to look back on it at the end of the year with LSU and or Florida State, and they're going to point to this. Well, you guys lost to Florida State, or if FSU does win the ACC title and they're trying to get in, let's say, for a playoff spot, they're going to look back and say, well, you guys lost to LSU. It's going to knock them. This game is huge. I mean, I shouldn't have to explain that to anybody. This is probably my favorite game on the slate, just because it's on a Sunday night. I believe it's the only game that on that Sunday, Christian, next weekend, 7 days from now. I mean, this game is going to be highly watched. I'm so excited just as a college football fan to watch this game, just because of the sheer amount of talent on both teams. But Christian, I'm going to give you my prediction here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, give me Florida State, 31-28, late field goal, baby. I'm calling. I know they're 3-point dogs. Give me Florida State, baby.
All right. My score prediction on this: LSU 35, FSU 28. That's the way I see it.
Okay.
I think again, last year was a close game. I think again this year it'll be a close game. Obviously, we saw these two teams look totally different than they did to start the year off. I think they're both going to have some momentum that rides early in this game, and it's just going to be a good game to watch. I mean, again, that's the biggest thing here. I think it'll be a close game. I know obviously fans of both fan bases are going to probably say that, obviously there's no chance that either one of the other teams keeps it close and it's a blowout. But again, for a college football fan, this is going to be a good one, dude.
Oh God, man. I am this. I've been waiting for this one all year, man, or all off season. Seriously, I know it's two teams, prominent schools, blue bloods, if you want to call them that, of college football, but this game should be good, man. And as a college football fan, even though I'm rooting for Florida State, I want this game to be super close. I want it to be a freaking slugfest. And I'm going to definitely be drinking some beer. So,
all right, son. We'll be pounding down some brewskis, getting ready to go. We may have to do, again, I think we got a new tradition here, Chris. We started this, obviously, yesterday, and that is if there's a blowout, we got to do a celebratory chugging contest here to kind of make it a little more interesting, make it a little more palatable.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Well, Chris, let's get into our last game here for us. A little Duke versus Clemson preview, right? This is one where, obviously when we started looking at this game, Chris, we kind of touched on it a little bit. A lot of Clemson fans got riled up, man. They wanted to let us know how Clemson's going to come out and dominate them. They started giving us the stats about national championships and this, that, the other. We had some guys say it was clickbait, and I don't think at any point during that segment did we actually say this was a hot take. Did we actually say that Duke was going to beat Clemson? With that being said, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it over.
Yeah,
for Clemson side.
I'll speak for the old Clemson Tigers here. And like I said, I think this game is slept on as well. This is a conference game, week 1. Conference games are tough. They are most of the time, especially week 1, right? Clemson, it comes down to me personally, and I would assume most Clemson fans, DJ is gone. He's at Oregon State. How does Cade Klubnik play, man? We watched him play last year. He got some meaningful minutes. I'm not saying the kid can't throw the ball. I'm not saying that he might not be a great quarterback, but boy, he's got to cut it down on the turnovers. I know he was young.
Yep.
I understand he had to come in for some mop-up duty and DJ quitting the team, all that drama. So I'm not going to say that he can't play, but to me, their season this year, especially with Florida State being as hyped up as they are, comes down to the play of Cade Klubnik. Also, Dabo Swinney, man, last year, what'd they go, like 11-3 or something like that? It was a good season for most teams, but Clemson is known and used to winning, competing for national titles. I don't think Cade Klubnik overall is going to be, unfortunately, he's had to follow the Trevor Lawrence's, the Deshaun Watson. He's not those two. But is he better than DJ? Can they move the ball? They got a hell of a running back in Will Shipley. If you guys haven't watched him play, I like him a lot this year. He don't get near enough love as far as the running backs go. But I guess Dabo, does he get it going again? And this is going to be a tough game. I know we're talking Duke here, and we look at Duke, and everybody thinks, oh, yep, basketball school. I know I do that sometimes as well, Christian. The big thing here, though, is like I said, if Cade Klubnik doesn't turn the ball over, I know Will Shipley's going to have another good year. Can they play defense, and can they keep this game? Can they keep this game out of reach for Duke? And I'm going to let you probably speak on Duke. We've talked about them. I think Duke is one of those teams that's very underrated. I know they won a lot of games last year. I don't believe they played each other last year. But Christian, go ahead and tell me why Duke, maybe has a chance to upset Clemson here.
Well, right off the rip, let's just get right into it here. Duke returned 17 starters, by the way, from a team that won 9 games with a first-year coach in the ACC.
Yep, that's impressive. Very impressive.
Right, so that alone should give you some hope if you're a Duke fan. Here's the other thing. I know most Clemson fans are going to be quick to point out the talent disparity, obviously, between the two teams. Obviously, the no stars versus the 4 and 5 stars kind of argument that they're gonna kind of throw out there. But dude, let's not forget how Klubnik looked against Tennessee in that bowl game, right? And Tennessee, by the way, by all accounts, did not have a lights out defense last year. No. So I think Duke actually might have just as good or even a slightly better defense than Tennessee. And that might sound controversial, obviously, because I'm an SEC homer here, right? And it's not that I'm even trying to bash on Tennessee so much. It's just you can look at it from most metrics, and I really believe that Duke, is going to have a good shot to have a good defense this year, right? The biggest question mark, and we touched on it, Chris, is going to be how will Duke hold up against these 4 and 5 star Clemson players that they're going to be bringing to the table here. I mean, obviously the schedule was a lot easier for them last year for them to win 9 games. The schedule gets much tougher, especially in game 1. We see the matchup predictor here. I mean, they're going 86.8% chance of Clemson winning this game. They're only giving Duke a 13.2% chance here. Chris, for me, I'm going to go ahead and get right down to brass tacks and dollars. Give me Duke for the upset of a lifetime, 27 to Clemson's 24.
Wow. Damn, you better put some money on that, son. I have Clemson winning this game. I think it's really close, though. If I'm not mistaken, I think Clemson's like a 13-point favorite right now. As far as Vegas goes. I think this game is within 10 points. I think it's close. I think it's kind of ugly. I think Duke's going to put the world on notice, though, I think after this week 1, man. I do. I think they're going to play Clemson close enough. Give me Clemson in an ugly one, 27-21. That's where I'm at with this. I think this is the closer game. I like I said, I'm not sold on Cade Klubnik yet. I'm going to have to see it. And it is week 1, Christian. Anything can happen, man. We see it. Like I said, I love your bold take there, though, on Duke. I like it.
Yeah, I almost think you kind of have to take a bold stance on that. A lot of other people are starting to kind of come in there and kind of make the same take, right? Where they say, "Hey, Duke's going to upset Clemson." We hear it from different people around the world of college football. They're picking this as maybe one of those potential upsets. Again, it's going to be an interesting game, right? I mean, it's one of those games where, to me, it's kind of hard to say. Either Clemson comes in and blows them out of the water,
right,
or Duke wins the game. I don't see a scenario. I see it very hard to be in between that, right? Could it be a close game where Duke kind of, fumbles it at the end and the talent disparity kind of leads to it, kicks themselves? Yeah, maybe, but I don't know, man. I'm a big proponent still, knowing that program of Duke, right, and how bad they've been over the last decade or decades of football has kind of been really tough to kind of palate. But you got a coach that comes in, gets 9 wins first year, gets most of his starters back, especially quarterback, running back, and wide receivers. They've got enough experience there to kind of hold pace with it. Put the pressure on Cade Klubnik, who, we've got a very small sample size to see what he can do. So I think this will be a very, very interesting game week.
I love it. I love your take, man. Like I said, it's one thing about me and you. We'll put our foot down in the sand. So. And the good thing is we get to come back and talk about it the next week and how right I was and how wrong you were, Christian. It's usually how that works.
Well, like I said, Chris, to start the broadcast off, you were telling me about how Jacksonville State was going to was just get run off the water by UTEP, and I also came in there and said, hey, I told people to take the spread on the Navy Notre Dame game, and again, we were both wrong about some things this week in college football, so that's okay. That's going to happen from time to time, and as much bold takes as we make around here, we're going to eventually be wrong. So, way to get us going very, very early in the season. And like I said, dude, I mean, college football is such a fickle thing, right? I mean, UTEP probably should have beat Jacksonville State in that game, right? As you kind of alluded to.
Yeah, they were the better team, but that doesn't mean shit.
No. And I really, in my heart of hearts, think if Navy would have been a lot better coached and probably came in with a little bit better semblance of a game plan against Notre Dame, they at least should have covered.
Right. Okay. I like it.
Well, Chris, I think, we're approaching the 10:30 mark here, in the morning. So our first Sunday morning show here, pretty successful, I would say. Again, for this upcoming week, we're probably not going to be doing, we're not going to be doing a Wednesday show just because too much football is going on. We did make an executive decision for the channel, though, and I think this is very interesting. We kind of sat down last night and started talking about how we wanted to do a dual cast with Florida, Utah, Nebraska, Minnesota. I think just where we're at right now, we need to get a couple years of calling these games under our belt, and then we'll probably look to dual cast some games if that should happen. But I think for this upcoming week, we're just going to focus on the Nebraska-Minnesota game. We'll probably end up keeping the Florida-Utah game up on screen for us, so we'll kind of keep that game up, watching it, and we may kind of reference it a little bit throughout the stream. So, but again, we'll be back live, I believe, around 6:30, 6:40 Central Time on Thursday, getting ready to kick off a very exciting Week 1 college football.
Absolutely. Like I said, appreciate it, guys. Tune in Thursday. We'll be here live. Like I said, get the Nebraska fans in here, baby. It's time.
Let's go. It starts meaning something right now, and we're ready to go. But, guys, we'll catch you with a couple drinks in our